This is why the Ole Miss Rebels are going to beat the Florida Gators. We give you the answer key before Saturday's test.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. And on today's show, we're talking about why Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels are going to beat the Florida Gators and Billy Napier. This Ole Miss team has been on fire recently with dominant wins over Arkansas and a huge 3-score victory over the Georgia Bulldogs. And the best part, they did it without Trey Harris, who is likely to suit up Saturday based on the latest injury reports. The Rebels have adopted a playoff mindset and is full steam ahead against the Gators. Join me as we break it all down. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make this show what it is. Don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Brandon Olson at Locked On Gators. They each provide different perspectives on college football, the SEC, and actually Ole Miss as well. So tune into them. You can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So a really big football game this weekend for the Ole Miss Rebels. If you consider what it means and where Ole Miss sits in the playoff rankings and all of that, this Ole Miss Florida game is absolutely massive. And other fan bases have been wish casting and all of this about how Florida is going to upset Ole Miss and all of that. And Florida has played better. Don't hear me poo-poo on what they have done. But I do not think they're at the level to where if Ole Miss plays well, Florida can win. Florida needs help from Ole Miss to win this ball game. Ole Miss has to not play clean this game. Drive-saving third down penalties, turnovers, going forward at the wrong time on fourth down. Those things will all help a Florida team to kind of bring down the level. I always talk about that bell curve to get it to the point where the Florida Gators can take over. DJ Lagway, I think, is going to be an absolutely phenomenal quarterback in 2025 and beyond. But in 2024, he is gettable. Right now, he throws most of his passes outside the hash marks, a lot of goes, a lot of back shoulder fades. And they really don't ask him to just move the ball down the field. We talked with Brandon Olson yesterday in the crossover, and he talked about 9 out of the 11 Florida drives against LSU were 5 plays or less. This is a Florida team that is very explosive play reliant to move the ball down the football field. Now, Elijah Badger, Jaden Baugh, they have really good players and some talented guys that can hurt you. That's the reason I do expect Florida to score some points in this game. But overall, I don't know if they can consistently put it together. As Brandon Olson said, it's not really a sustainable mode of offense for the Florida Gators, although I pointed out that it is an excitable mode of the Florida offense. So we talk about that, and then you have an Ole Miss football team that's starting basically the Oklahoma game. Everybody's going to talk about halftime of the Oklahoma game. It wasn't halftime of the Oklahoma game. That was just a bye week. And the first half can always be weird after a bye week, which Ole Miss is coming off a bye week this week as well. But it took a little bit for everything to click in after that bye week. And in the second half, Ole Miss started going. They were off and running against Oklahoma. Then they were off and running the next week against the Arkansas Razorbacks. And then they just beat the brakes off, at that point, the number 2 ranked Georgia Bulldogs. So this Ole Miss team's in a playoff mode, and they have been thriving. It's an interesting question. Whenever you put all of that pressure on yourself, like Jaxson Dart did after the LSU game, whenever he said, we've got to win out, and he was absolutely distraught. There's a lot of programs and a lot of teams that would have wilted in that moment, that the moment would have been too much for them. And Ole Miss has not done that. Jaxson Dart has not allowed that to happen. His play is elevated over the last few weeks, including against the Georgia Bulldogs. So that makes me think that the pressure in the moment of this Florida game is not going to be too much. In past years, weird things have happened when Ole Miss hit this point of the schedule. When something could happen to where Ole Miss was going to turn that corner, there would be a weird 4th and 25 or something like that that would happen. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I don't know that Ole Miss had a belief system around them that they could actually pull off what wins. That something was just going to go through, everything was going to be fine. And that resulted in a lot of games that were closer than they needed to be. Ole Miss riding the roller coaster, playing up and down to their competition. Lane Kiffin hasn't really done that. Now, save the Kentucky game, which they didn't play well at all. We talked about that ad nauseum. And heck, rival fan bases are saying that about every 30 seconds right now to kind of prop up something that they've done, but never the stats that make the Ole Miss side look better. But never those. Just the Kentucky game. That's the only thing. And with Ole Miss having that Georgia shield behind them, they are really upset because they know that Ole Miss is not going to get jumped. So Ole Miss needs a loss, so they are wish casting this game. They're talking about Florida beating LSU and why that means that Florida has arisen and they're going to be there to upset Ole Miss at 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. This isn't that Florida team. Now, this Florida team can be good. This Florida team has talent, but they are like next to last in defense and next to last in offense or something like that. I forget the number that Brandon Olston said, but either way, it was not very good. He mentioned Oklahoma is the only one worse on scoring offense or something like that. And it was interesting to see that. And Florida has talent. They're going to have talent. Like I said, DJ Lagway in 2025 and 2026 is going to be an absolutely holy terror. But this is not the team that I think is going to beat Ole Miss and keep Ole Miss from their goal. I talked with Brandon yesterday about this playoff run and what Jaxson Dart has at his feet. And if Jaxson Dart can get Ole Miss on a playoff run and get them to the playoffs, we're talking statues in between the football stadium and the pavilion. Or sitting right next to John Howard Vault down by the Starnes Center. It's interesting of what all this says. And when Ole Miss has urgency, real pressure, it seems like this team excels. And they're going to have a lot of pressure this weekend. They are. Because they are expected to beat Florida. I think they're a 10-point favorite in the game. The game is in Gainesville. Now, at noon, whenever that game is played in Florida, Ole Miss has done pretty well against Florida. In 2008, the Tebow crying game, that game was played at noon. In 2003, the Eli wins, the Goldie McClendon touchdown game, that was played at 11 o'clock in the morning. So Ole Miss has done well in Gainesville at 11 o'clock in the morning. So it's going to be nice that you do not have to deal with a night atmosphere at the Swamp because when they get going, they get going. So it is kind of nice that it's going to be at a sleepy little atmosphere thing with the fan base that they're excited. They're hoping to win, but they do not expect to win. And it's going to be up to Ole Miss to keep that crowd out of it. And the Ole Miss can do that by front running in this game. I do think Ole Miss needs to win the toss, take the ball, go down and score a touchdown, get a stop, go up by 2 scores, and just kind of play keep away the rest of the game. I think that's the perfect game for Ole Miss. So we'll see exactly how it goes. So Florida's faced some top-tier quarterbacks this season. You know, they've played Cam Ward and Quinn Ewers, but Jaxson Dart might be the best one they've seen yet. And with the stage set, could Dart's torch the Gators and break Eli Manning's career passing record? Find out next. All right, folks, it's time to level up your football season with Prize Picks. It's the ultimate way to add some real excitement to your game day. Whether you're a stats guru or just love the thrill of daily fantasy, Prize Picks makes it simple and fun to turn your sports knowledge into real cash prizes. Here's what sets Prize Picks apart. You can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. That's right, just pick more or less on player projections like rushing yards, touchdowns, and passing completions. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, by the way. If one of your players gets hurt in the first half and doesn't return to the lineup, your lineup still stays live. They've made everything so fast and secure. Withdrawals can hit your account in as little as 15 minutes. And now they even offer Venmo for deposits and payouts. This week, I'm looking at the football board and picking. It's like, hey, okay, yeah, I think Patrick Mahomes is going more than a touchdown and a half in this game, and maybe Jordan Jefferson more than 83.5 receiving yards. That sounds right to me. It's so easy to play. Just open the apps and make your pick in under 60 seconds and let the fun begin. It's been a blast sharing these picks with friends, and the injury insurance gives me a little peace of mind. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $50 instantly when you play that first $5 lineup. So Prize Picks, run your game. So Florida has played some really good quarterbacks this season. Really good. I mean, Cam Ward is up there statistically with where Jaxson Dart is sitting right now. Quinn Ewers is a good quarterback as well. And both of those quarterbacks picked the Florida secondary apart. Just absolutely ripped them to shred. And Florida's been dealing with injuries on the back end of that secondary to begin with. I think Jaxson Dart's the best quarterback that Florida is going to see this year. I think Jaxson Dart's the best quarterback in the country, and I said that 8 months ago. There's receipts to that one. You can go back and look up the video on that one. I think that every team in the country would trade whichever quarterback they had for Jaxson Dart. Seriously. And Jaxson Dart coming into this game, the leadership, everything on the line, and every question that has been asked of Jaxson Dart, he has answered. Not even close. I think he has a chance to do that against the Florida Gators this weekend. He is 379 yards from Eli Manning's career passing mark, a mark that he could meet in this ball game. I've seen games, we've all seen games in the last month where Jaxson Dart has gone off throwing the ball down the field. And with Trey Harris potentially coming back into the fold this week against the Florida Gators, that's a big deal for Jaxson Dart and the Ole Miss Rebels. Trey Harris has 59 catches, 987 yards, and 6 touchdowns this season. And here's the best part. He has not played the last 3.5 games, yet he is still in first place in the Southeastern Conference in receiving yards. Absolutely nuts. So Trey Harris is a name to watch in this game, but he's not the players to watch in this game that I think of. I think Jaxson Dart obviously has a chance to control a lot of the aspects of this football game. A lot of this football game is going to come down to Jaxson Dart taking care of the football, playing clean, and executing big plays when they are there. Then the next two players to watch are defensive players. The fact that DJ Lagway is a little bit hobbled, he has this little contraption sewn into the back of his pants to keep his leg from overly flexing. They're trying to protect stretching out that hamstring anymore. I think somebody like Princely Amon-Mielen, somebody like Santarin Perkins, they're going to play a massive role in this game. And if JJ Pegues and Walter Nolan can get pressure in the inside and force Lagway out to these sides, to the left or the right, into these rushing players, that should be interesting to see. If a healthy DJ Lagway was in the game, I think it would be a different situation, because in this game, if Lagway is truly still hobbled a little bit, I think Ole Miss is going to play a lot of two-man in this game, because you don't play quarterbacks with running ability with two-man. You do against quarterbacks that are statues. And last week against LSU, DJ Lagway couldn't run. He could play the quarterback position. He has all the arm talent in the world. Him and Elijah Badger and those guys, they're really good players, but he could not run around and do the things that make him scary next level type good down the road. So we'll have to pay attention to how athletic he is. Princely Amon-Mielen and that interior defensive line, they're going to play a big role in that as well. And TJ Daugherty, if he gets outside, if he breaks contain, somebody like TJ Daugherty, Poopaw, those players have a chance to have really big games. I'm pretty excited about what could happen in this one. But it all comes down to Jaxson Dart, honestly. Jaxson Dart at quarterback in college football and honestly high school football at this point. If you have a quarterback, you win. If you don't have a quarterback, you struggle. I mean, it's just the way it works. I mean, if you look at the Florida Gators, They struggle with Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz is an okay quarterback, but he's not a good quarterback. But DJ Lagway is. DJ Lagway has lifted the levels of all the players around him, which is what a good quarterback like a Jaxson Dart can do. Again, DJ Lagway's biggest problem that he has right now is youth. It's also probably one of his biggest advantages, not knowing everything that's going on. He doesn't know better than to put the ball in that certain situation. So that probably helps him out a little bit as well. But I don't know that DJ Lagway has the ability to drive the ball down the field against this defense. I think Pete Golden's going to have some stuff to confuse him. I think all of the stuff that he can do to Lagway is stuff that Ron Roberts can't do to Jaxson Dart. Now, Florida picked off Carson Beck 3 times, but they got chewed up by Cam Ward and Quinn Ewers. And I talked with Brandon Olson on yesterday's show, and he said there's a good chance that he thinks that this Ole Miss game could look like that Texas game, especially if if Florida can't stay on the field like Kentucky. See, that's the secret sauce in that Kentucky game. And we talked with Brandon Olson about how Kentucky beats teams in football. And as Brandon says, you never argue with an idiot because they drag you down to their level and they beat you with experience. And he said that is the way that Kentucky plays football. His question is whether or not Florida can do that too. With their inability to sustain drives against LSU, which has a explosive, aggressive defense, but not necessarily a good one, to be able to not sustain drives against that group gives him pause, because he thinks if you give Jaxson Dart and this Ole Miss offense numerous opportunities, you're going to be in trouble. And honestly, I agree. I completely agree. When you look at Jaxson Dart's numbers over the course of the season, 211, 298, 3,409 yards, 22 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He got his arm hit against Georgia was one of his picks. He did throw a couple of bad picks, but he's been good for the most part this season. It's something. And whenever you look at the weapons that he has outside of Trey Harris, Caden Lee's about to go over 700 yards. Jordan Watkins is about to go over 700 yards. Juice Wells about to go over 600 yards. When you look at the tight ends that have gotten into this game after the Trey Harris injury, Daquan Wright's been very good for Ole Miss with 19 receptions for 247 this season. And then you have the old standby in Caden Prescorn with 18 catches for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. There's a real chance that Ole Miss has so many weapons that it kind of it befuddles that defense a little bit. Now, Florida had 7 sacks against LSU. LSU had given up 6 sacks before that, and they've played Alabama, they'd played Ole Miss, they have played South Carolina. So in those 3 games, nobody did what Florida did in this last game, which tells me a couple of things. First of all, LSU was without a starting guard, and there was a hole on their offensive line. That's just what it was. And we talk all the time about LSU there at quit warning. It's a quit watch, quit warning. There's a quit noticed on the ground happening for LSU right now. They had players-only meetings. There is a real morale problem dealing with the LSU Tigers, and now they're thinking about opt-outs for who is going to play in the Texas Bowl whenever they actually go. There's a lot of stuff going on at LSU right now. So I don't know if you can take that 7-sack number and just say, oh my goodness, Florida's really good. Although Florida is pretty good and they have the talent to beat you, I just don't know that they have that much talent to where it just jumps off the page. We'll see how it looks, but I do think like Julius Buelow and Nate Kalepo and all that, who have done an excellent job of pass protecting, they're going to continue to pass protect. They're going to continue to be that dude, and we'll see exactly how Jaxson Dart does, because whenever Ole Miss gets the ball out of Jackson's hand quickly and Ole Miss uses all of its weapons on the field, nobody has proven that they can stop this offense at this point. Even the Georgia Bulldogs, as good and as talented as they are, could not stop the offense. Ole Miss kicked field goals, sure, but Ole Miss only punted twice in that whole game against Georgia. It was pretty impressive to what could happen. So Coming up in our final segment, we're breaking down Saturday's big matchup between Ole Miss and Florida. Final thoughts, bold predictions, and what to expect in this showdown of SEC teams. Don't miss it. Hey everyone, I've got something for you that's a real game changer. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink, the world's first genetically engineered probiotic designed to help you feel great in the morning after a night out. It's created by PhD scientists. ZBiotics tackles those rough mornings by breaking down a toxic byproduct in your gut that is responsible for hangovers, not dehydration like most people think. Look, I won't lie. I was a bit skeptical at first. But then while hanging out with some friends at a weekend barbecue, I decided to give it a try. I made ZBiotics my first drink of the night, followed by my usual favorite drinks, and the next morning felt amazing. It was like I hadn't even gone out the night before. No sluggishness, no grogginess, just ready to take on the day. Here's how it works. ZBiotics produces an enzyme that breaks down toxic byproducts in your gut that is responsible for those rough mornings. Just remember, for best results, make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. And of course, drink responsibly. Head on over to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, at checkout. Plus, ZBiotics is backed by a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're not satisfied, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember, that's zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all one word for 15% off. Try ZBiotics. It's the key to feeling your best after a night out. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if they win. Ole Miss right now is a 10.5-point favorite, depending on how you look at it, over the Florida Gators on Saturday. And I have a big-time hunch that this team is about to roll. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So just walking and chewing gum a little bit at the same time, there's a couple of games that Ole Miss fans need to pay attention to, along with the Florida game that Ole Miss desperately needs to win. If Ole Miss wins out, Ole Miss is in the playoff. And who Ole Miss plays in the playoff is in a large part dependent on these football games. So we are going to pay attention to what is going on. The first thing we're looking at is the Texas A&M at Auburn game. Texas A&M is favored by 2.5 points. That line has not moved all week, despite them having 95% of the money and the bets on Texas A&M this week. Vegas knows something. This is a game that Auburn can easily win. And if you look at Mike Elko during the week, he said he is 100% focused on Texas. I mean Auburn. Whenever that happened, that Freudian slip lets you know exactly what this Texas game means to them and how it will go. The other game's on at the same time as the Ole Miss Florida game. That's number 5 Indiana at number 2 Ohio State in the Horseshoe. Ohio State, I think, is favored by 13.5 points. It's on Fox. Listen, if you're the number 5 team in the country, you're not a 14-point underdog to the number 2 team. There's not that big of a gap between 2 and 5. There's just not. Indiana is there because of their record. If they had taken a loss at any point during the season, they would not be anywhere near as high. They would still be just as dangerous as they are right now, but it is what it is. If Indiana beats Ohio State, that number 5 will become justified by their name. If they lose to Ohio State, it's going to be really hard to deal with a team that has a worse schedule than a G5 team in the playoffs, even hosting a playoff game. So Indiana has to beat Ohio State, or they're at best traveling. At worst, they're missing the playoffs altogether. Penn State is at Minnesota. Penn State's favored by 12.5 points over unranked Minnesota. See what I mean by that point spread thing? 2:30 on CBS. This is a game that Minnesota is good enough to beat you. They've got, I think, 6 wins on the season. Penn State's, looking ahead to the end of the season, trying to get into the playoffs and all of that. This just has a chance for playoff chaos. Just pay attention to the scoreboard in this game. And the last game is the night game on NBC. Number 24, Army at number 8, Notre Dame. The rankings are a little bit wrong because this is a graphic that I made a little bit earlier in the week. Notre Dame's favored by 14 over the Black Knights. Notre Dame loses the game. They are probably out of the playoff with a Northern Illinois loss as well. Army, number 24. They're a good team, and they have a chance, Army, if they beat Notre Dame, to propel themselves into the playoff. And the one interesting thing is, if they propel themselves into the playoff, it's not Boise State that's in jeopardy of missing. It isn't one G5 team that has a chance to make the playoff. Boise State being in at number 13, number 12, they have a bye right now. That means that the Big 12 champion is sitting below them. And if Army beats Notre Dame, there's a chance that they could jump the Big 12 champion and put the Big 12 champion out of the playoff altogether. That is something to keep an eye on as well. All right, going back to this Florida game, this is going to be my final score prediction of this game. I think Ole Miss is going to win the game 31-17. I do think that Florida is going to score a touchdown at the end to make the game seem closer than it was, but Ole Miss is just riding really high right now. You have less than 100% DJ Lagway. You do have some weapons in the Florida offense, and whether or not Florida can play keep away and turn this into a rock fight is going to determine the final score. If Florida plays like they did against LSU offensively, it's going to be problematic for the Gators. And the defense has to do better than they have against Cam Ward and Quinn Ewers whenever they saw quarterbacks that can do what Jaxson Dart does. Really interesting stuff, and Trey Harris coming back into this game. Again, I want to say this and be perfectly clear for anybody watching this. I think in 2025 and 2026, DJ Lagway is going to be terrifying for teams around the SEC facing him. Absolutely terrifying. The DJ Lagway, though, right now, the 2024 DJ Lagway, who essentially always throws the ball outside the numbers and throws it deep, has no real intermediate passing game to speak of. That's a DJ Lagway that can be gotten, and Pete Golden and Zach Arnett and all of the numerous defensive coordinators that Ole Miss football has. They have a chance to really earn their money. I think this is a game that Trey Washington and John Saunders and the safety group for Ole Miss, as much as DJ Lagway likes to throw the ball deep, this is going to be an important game for them and to see how they go. I'm expecting them to handle it pretty well. A fun matchup in this game will be Elijah Badger and Trey Amos. If that happens, I'm sure Billy Napier is going to do what he can to scheme up Badger on somebody else in the game. Florida does have another wide receiver. I forgot his name at the moment, having kind of a brain tumor moment. But Florida can throw the ball downfield. I think they're one of 5 teams, including Ole Miss, that have 2 receivers that are averaging over 20 yards per game as well. So that's it. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number 1 Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And also exciting news, you can now become a Locked On Ole Miss insider, the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. It's our texting program that sends you notifications on anything relevant without the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so don't miss out. The link is down in the description. For those of you watching on YouTube, we are going to send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Howdy toddy, everyone. Safe travels to Gainesville.